Defining Duke, an Xbox podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support the show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Salutations, everybody. It is Maddie here, and welcome to episode 51 of Defining Duke Ultimate, a Defining Duke supplement. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, Lord Cognito. Cog, how are you feeling today?
Doing good, Maddie. We got some royalty in the building today. I'm very excited for this Ultimate. What's going on, man?
Dude, we got a fire interview here today. Joining us is Graham Smith, co-founder of Drinkbox Studio. Graham, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks very much for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Of course. Awesome. Now, Graham, let's get into it right away, right? We're not going to do any build-up, any cog level suspense here like we typically do on the show. We're getting right into it. Who are you? Who's Drinkbox, for those who don't know? And your next game, it happens to be on Xbox platforms. What is it? Let's get into it.
Sure, yeah. Okay, so my name's Graham Smith. I'm one of the founders of Drinkbox Studios. If you haven't heard of us, you might know us from our most popular game, Guacamelee, which came to Xbox a while ago now. But yeah, the company was founded back in 2008, so we're about to hit our 14-year anniversary. We've been around a while now. I think most people associate us with like Sony because most of our games have come out on Sony platforms first, but so we started there. Like our first game was called About a Blob. It came out on PlayStation 3 back in February 2011, a long time ago now. And then we had a sequel to that on Vita, Mutant Blob's Attack. We were big supporters of the Vita platform back in the day. Then Guacamelee came out on PlayStation 3 and Vita. That was like April 2013. Then we did Severed. That was also launched on Vita in 2016. And then Guacamelee 2 came to all platforms in 2018, 2019. Now we're working on a game called Nobody Saves the World, which is coming out next week. I don't know when this is hitting, but I guess January 18th, Tuesday. Yeah. It's gonna come out on Xbox platforms and Steam. And launching into Game Pass on day one. So that's a first for us. And a little bit about the game. It's very different from anything we've done before. We like to try different things because we get bored just working on platformers so Severed was really out of the box for us, and this game is really different for us as well. It's a top-down action RPG. Where the main mechanic of the game is like you're switching between a lot of different character forms, so the gameplay mechanics are changing constantly, and the game actually forces you to do so. It'll present you with certain kinds of challenges, so you'll start to learn like which ones we call them forms, your character classes, which forms are best suited for different challenges, and also you get the ability to like customize your forms. So like you'll be doing a lot of customization, like pulling abilities from different forms and combining your own forms to take on the game's challenges. So yeah. That's Nobody Saves the World.
Very excited for it.
Nice. Yeah, I want to jump in, man. This is pretty exciting. Seeing where you guys come from as a studio, and then seeing Nobody Saves the World. And one thing that grabbed me is just kind of like that humor and that art style, and it's very vibrant. It's very cool. So like, I know off the top, I'll be taking the Strongman and the Magician with the rabbit. I'm definitely going to be diving into those. But what I wanted to ask you, Graham, is like, what do you think that you learned coming from a Guacamelee, coming from this history of these really cool games, great humor, great, story, and as far as the art style, like what did you learn to be able to implement now when Nobody Saves the World?
Oh, that's a good question. There's a lot of things in kind of a lot of different areas. Coming from like the game design side of things, one thing that I think is really important that often gets overlooked by indie studios is like the importance of play testing, which is not the most exciting thing. Like, games, different genres of games, they have completely different designs, right? So like what's coming from the design in a Metroidvania might not apply to like a top-down RPG, But one thing that I think is consistent across all of our games that we've learned over the years is that like if you want your game to be good, you got to play test the hell out of it, because like if it's only people inside your studio that are playing it, you're just gonna miss things, right? So we've been playtesting Nobody Saves the World for over a year now with different people, and the game has changed dramatically. And there's also internal playtesting happening. Like everyone on our team has played through the entire game many times. And, I'm usually the one who gets the giant feedback lists and has to go through it and try and find like where the commonalities are. Like some people will send me like, it's like, I don't know, 100-page documents of ideas and like things we should do. So like, it's a little bit like kind of like wrangling cats, or mostly it's like looking for common themes, like where are the problems? And then, that's the internal stuff. So like, how do you prioritize? What do you want to work on when you get all this feedback? That's a big problem. And then with playtesters, it was, this time around, we've always playtested our games, and I think it really helps your games. It helps solidify your game and make it, any issues that people might have, especially in the opening of the game, you find them really quickly with new people. So this game has been more of a challenge for sure, though, because first of all, we're in a pandemic, and so we had to do everything remotely. Right. And it used to be, we used to invite people into our studio, and they play through our games. And also, this game is a lot longer than our previous games. Like Guacamelee is like a 6-hour game. This is like a 20-hour game. So instead of having someone come to the studio for a day or two and play the game, and we would stream their video out to everyone on the team, and we'd all be chatting and like, comparing notes and like making sure everyone's watching when they're having problems. Now we have to do it over like Discord. So, and it's over the course of at least a week. So it's been more challenging because of the pandemic for sure. Also because of the length of the game, but extremely important. And then, so that's, trying to solidify your game. I think playtesting is extremely important. Then other things like just marketing the game and making sure people know about it. That's also been more challenging in the pandemic because we don't have, we used to rely heavily on things like PAX or other shows where we would go meet with press, show them the game, give them hands-on. Now we have to do that we were using like Parsec and Discord and Steam builds and stuff like that. Yeah. So I know you probably had to do some of that yourselves maybe. But like trying to demo a game that way is not the same as sitting beside someone at PAX and playing it with them and answering their questions. It's just a little bit, there's more of a wall there, like a virtual wall. It's hard to describe, but still, it's still extremely important, and trying to do as much of that as we can with this game and with every game. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Especially in the pandemic and all the different aspects of development. But go ahead, Manny. I know you want to jump in. You got tons of stuff to ask.
Well, I feel like it's a perfect segue. You talked about marketing, getting the game out there. One thing we really wanted to ask, it's been a big goal of ours, is I know everyone's reasoning is different for Game Pass day one and kind of what goes into that deal. And we know there's a lot of contracts and obligations and whatnot that have to be fulfilled, and that sometimes the topic has to be danced around delicately, but was one of the lead reasons for your team choosing, like, let's do day one Game Pass. Was it the the marketing and the visibility? The reason I ask is because I think oftentimes the consumer perspective is, and I mean this with no disrespect, but it's like, you're the indie studio. Like, you need every bit of cash like you can get. Like, you need the sales, not the Game Pass deal. And oftentimes something Cog and I have like butted heads with the audience is support the devs. And when you're downloading on Game Pass, you're not supporting the devs. So we're looking to sort of right the record here potentially and just get some inside baseball on your decision as a team to say, like, we're doing an independent game. It's different than anything we've done before. And we're doing it day one on Game Pass where like people can just go download it and effectively not pay for it. So what was the thought process behind making this decision?
Okay. Yeah, there's a bit of a story to this one.
Let's go. Yep. We like that.
Basically, yeah. I mean, every game we've ever released, we've tried to partner with one of the platform holders, or if not a platform holder, with a publisher. So, the process, the way we make a game typically is we brainstorm an idea, we build a prototype, and actually even before we build a prototype, sometimes we're already pitching it, like depending on the timing of when the shows are happening, like GDC or E3 or whatever. We try and go to all of the major trade shows, set up meetings with all of the platform holders. And, at the beginning of the company's life, that was pretty difficult to do because no one knows who you are. But luckily we went to an event actually in Paris as one of our first ones. And we got a meeting with Sony back then. And they only took the meeting because they heard the name Drinkbox and they thought it was cool. So that's
salute to the name.
Yeah. And then we pitched about a blob there, and we ended up signing with this program called Pub Fund. And then, similarly with Guacamelee, we ended up signing on with Sony for Pub Fund. So those were deals that, that people didn't get the game for free on day one. But the whole point of what I'm trying to say is that we want to look at ways of mitigating risk on our launches, right? So to date, pretty much Drinkbox has self-funded everything that we've done. So that we bootstrapped cash when the company first started by having people on our team do outsource work for other studios. I was one of those people. I was doing programming work at the beginning of the company, and I was working on for a lot of different companies, game companies, game adjacent companies, trying to build up some cash flow, some bankroll, and we also got some government support in Ontario and Canada, which is really really good to help us build our first game. And then we had the Sony Pub Fund, and what that was like when the game launches, they give you an advance on royalties, which they recoup. So it just gives you like a guarantee, like you can plan around like getting this much money in your bank when the game launches. You still have to deliver the game, right. and then you get a cash in your bank account, and then Sony will recoup that. This program doesn't exist anymore, this Pub Fund program, but
gotcha.
But yeah, at the time they would recoup that, and then you start getting additional royalties. So it's like you can at least guarantee it's almost like how many you're going to get, like this many sales on day one, and so you can plan around that, right? So it's just like it feels like a good cautious way to run a company is to try and make sure that that you're going to have cash in the bank. So especially when you're self-funding something and your bank account's going down, and then you launch the game, you hope it's going to come back up. So, but there are ways that you can mitigate that and guarantee it's going to go back up, right? So that's a long way of saying that basically every time we're making a new project, we're shopping it around people and trying to sell it. And there's all kinds of different deals that you can get. There's the typical publishing deal where people will pay you milestones along the way, right? And you don't get the cash influx at the end the same way. And there's often like a recoup that happens as well with publishers, but you get it along the way instead, right? So we're always looking for that stuff. And to fast forward to Nobody Saves the World, we were pitching this game back in early 2019 to people. Wow. So like 3 years basically, yeah. So we had paper concepts for the game, like a lot of like concept art. We had PowerPoint presentations, and I remember I was showing it to all the platform holders. And a lot of times when you're just pitching on paper, people they're not that interested. They want to see a prototype, right? Well, right. In this case, there was a publisher that was interested, and we did end up signing with this publisher. Not just this game, but we actually signed 2 games at that time, and cool. we were actually getting milestone payments for like a year. I think we signed with them like in October 2019, something like that. And then in it was less than a year later, like around April 2020, they canceled our projects. So,
wow. So this was right when the pandemic started too. So
yeah, just after the pandemic started. Wow. Yeah, it was actually on the anniversary of our founding, the day we took a call and they canceled. And so they canceled our projects, not just us. They canceled a bunch of projects.
Gotcha.
Because we were talking to other indies that were working with them and stuff. So it was just like they were doing something with their entire catalog and refreshing their catalog, I would say. So we thought we were going to be working with this publisher all the way to the end. And but yeah, like April 2020, we found out, okay, the funding is no longer coming. We got to keep all the funding up to that point, so that was great. And there was no hard feelings or anything because we knew it wasn't personal. So that was April 2020, and then we're like, okay, well, let's look for another partner. And so the same thing, we did the whole process again, but this time we did it in the middle of the project, right? So we actually had builds that we could send to people, and we talked to all of them again, right? Like Sony, Nintendo, Microsoft, and this time, and we've talked to Microsoft for all of our projects in the past as well, and we have some good people over there that we talked to that we really like. And this time, Microsoft was definitely the most interested, and we ended up moving forward with them to talk. So that could have just been like an ID at Xbox thing alone, right? But because of like what I said before about the guaranteeing like that on day one that you're going to have some kind of influx of cash to like that's why we spoke to them about the Game Pass deal. And because the Game Pass deals they can be pretty generous, and as part of that negotiation with them, I think initially we wanted more than what they were offering, and then they asked us if we could add online multiplayer to the game as part of the negotiation, and we agreed to do that. So that was part of the negotiation process with them. So yeah, they were the one who approached us about doing the online, and we actually had a lot of experience doing online stuff from previous jobs. Like I used to be a network programmer
Yes.
at Silicon Knights and at
Story
Pseudo
history,
Interactive.
by the way.
Yeah. And also like some of the projects I mentioned, like when we were bootstrapping Drinkbox, I was working with Activision on Marvel Ultimate Alliance, trying to do the networking there.
Oh, I had to have a segment for that. I'm sorry. Apologies. Continue. That's my heart. That is my heart.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah. So yeah, quick aside, Drinkbox in Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2, Drinkbox did all of the online multiplayer stuff for that game.
Wow.
So we knew how to do multiplayer.
Ooh.
We just never did it for our own games because we also knew how complicated and expensive it is to do multiplayer, right? So, when we were talking to Microsoft about it, like we knew it's something we could do, and we thought it would be worth it, and we actually thought it would be really well suited for this game to have online multiplayer. So yeah, we added that. That was not in the original plans for the game.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Very cool. Very cool. Just to touch on that, I mean, really, as far as mitigating risk and, as a studio pitching your idea and stuff like that. And I think that what was interesting, like you said, the idea at Xbox portion of it, them being interested, but then obviously the Game Pass thing. And I guess the reason why me and Maddie bring it up a lot is because, a lot of gamers, not all, I should say, there's a small contingent of gamers who feel like maybe if they were to get the game on Game Pass, they are not supporting you or supporting the move. Like, what do you say to that group who may have concerns or trepidation? Like, I need to buy the game. If I don't buy the game, it's really not helping Graham and Drinkbox. What do you say to that contingent of gamers?
Well, okay, that's a tricky question because I don't want people to pay for something they already have free access to. Because I mean, personally, like it's sometimes there's a few games that I've gotten for free through Game Pass that I've ended up purchasing on other platforms. Like Deep Rock Galactic is a good example of that. I really love that game, so I wanted to play it on other platforms too. But generally, it's true that if someone plays the game through Game Pass, we don't get any additional royalties. That we're just paid upfront for that, right? So, but I think that's it's known. Developers know that when they sign up, right? I think it's the same. I'm not 100% sure, but I think like it's true of Netflix too, right? If you put something on Netflix, you get paid once. It doesn't really matter. I mean, there's probably some deals where they get some percentage of royalties. Right. So yeah, that's true. Like if someone gets a game through Game Pass, we don't get any extra money, but we entered into this agreement knowing that, so it's kind of on us, right? Like I can't blame anyone for doing that. If they want to support Drinkbox, they could buy our previous games, or they could buy our game. They could pay for the game, but I don't know. I would never ask someone to pay for something that they get free access to be honest.
Absolutely. Just for the record, just want to make sure. Because some people really, really like the service, and obviously, and we all feel like, however you choose to get the game, it's up to the player choice. But for the record, like you said, the deal was done to kind of mitigate risk, to give you guys stability up front, and that helps the studio. So I just wanted to get that across, and thank you for answering that.
And I think Game Pass is such a good value prospect. Like, I'm not surprised. I don't know what the numbers are on Xbox, but I guess like, who has an Xbox that doesn't have Game Pass? I don't know. I don't know. Yeah.
Right. The attachment rate's got to be super high for that. Like, I don't know many Xbox owners who don't have it. I wanted to ask, keeping with the idea of Game Pass mitigating risk. You've talked how your history with your company has always been this way. I feel like with Game Pass, it's been the most public facing method that we've seen where people understand like there's a deal being struck, and there haven't always been milestone goals, but like we're seeing where companies are able to safely experiment in a way that they want to, and making sure they can get money in the bank. And I want to know, like, what's the difference between, say, a pub fund and Game Pass? I know you said it's generous, but was there any changes on that front to you on the back end? Because I think the public's become more aware that these deals are being made, and that it's not as simple as like make the game and hope it sells well, but that you can kind of, as you said, mitigate that risk. So was there any distinct differences between like a pub fund and something like a Game Pass deal? Or they function roughly the same in the terms of just, we have cash in the bank day one and we'll see how it sells after?
Yeah, I guess, from ours, there's a few differences. The Game Pass thing, there's no recoup at all associated with that, right? So that's a big difference. Like with the pub fund, you get the money, but that is that's going to be recouped. So like if Sony's going to give you, I don't know, $100,000, just say, that's $100,000 you might have gotten anyway, right, through sales, but now Sony's taking those initial sales back, right? So so that's how that one works. And with PubFund,
So they just to make sure they recoup up until that 100,000, say, and then the royalties change afterwards.
Yeah, and it goes back to the normal default royalty split after that. Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't think I'm breaking any NDAs. I think that's okay to say. With PubFund is a little bit different because PubFund, your game is never released for free to anyone. That's more like the PlayStation Plus, or what do they call it now, Instant Game Collection, or I don't know what the terms are.
Yeah.
That's a different kind of thing. I think that's more like Game Pass, where like you would make a deal with Sony to be like, they'll say like, we want to put your game for free as part of their Instant Game Collection for 3 months, and this is how much we're offering you. And that's very much like Game Pass, except Game Pass is typically longer than a Sony usually has like, these are the free games for the month. And then next month there are different games, right? But where Game Pass, it's like longer running terms in Game Pass. So those Game Pass and Instant Game Collection are more similar, I think, than Game Pass and PubFund.
Right.
Okay.
Wanted to ask about the online cooperative part, because you mentioned that, and obviously the experience there, and did want to touch briefly, obviously, because you've had this tremendous experience. You talk about the amazing Marvel Ultimate Alliance from a programming standpoint. You're talking about Silicon Knights, which for gamers, a lot of storied history. I remember them from like Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain days, and all the way up, I believe, Metal Gear Twin Snakes, 2 Human, the list goes on. So what was your role there, and tell me briefly about your experiences there, and then also how that helped you with this cooperative aspect of programming for Now Nobody Saves the World.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So, I mean, I'll start the story a little bit earlier. I went to school. I did a master's degree in computer science, and then I graduated. I guess I can't even remember what year, like 2000 or something. And I started working in like the customer service portal industry, where I was basically making apps for like web-based, like browser-based applications that were used in call centers. Nice. For like credit card companies or for insurance companies. So if you flip over your credit card and you call the number on the back, the person who answers the phone is sitting in front of a browser, and something that I would have been working on would show up in front of them with all your info. And, and sometimes it would prompt them to ask you, do you want to buy this insurance purchase? And it was like the least gratifying job you can imagine. It was so horrible, right? But it paid really well. Like the people in that industry, programmers in those industries make a lot of money. Oh, yeah. So then I was really getting sick of it. I did it for like 3 years, and I got to get out of here. And I was playing games all the time. Still, like I've always been a gamer, right? And I was just looking around, and I noticed that Silicon Knights was like, the building was just like a 10-minute drive down the road from where I was working at the time on a contract, like at one of these places, in one of these call centers. And so I applied, and I mean, long story short, there was an offer. I turned it down. I got a raise at this job, whatever. And I later, I didn't take the job. And then I kept working for another 4 months, and I'm like, I can't do this. So I applied again, and I took the job the second time. And so I went to work so I took a big pay cut to go into the games industry. And I figure like, okay, it's more important. Happiness is more important than money. I love games. This is going to be my passion. So I went there. And I really enjoyed working at Silicon Knights. I know there's definitely a storied history.
It's definitely a history.
And I met a lot of great people there. I still keep in touch with a lot of them, even though this was a long time ago now. But yeah, so I joined their technical team, and I started there immediately. This was when they were just starting to work on 2 Human with Microsoft.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, one thing I'll say about Silicon Knights, they were there was a little bit annoying at the time, was when I was interviewing, they were very protective of secrets. Like, they didn't want to tell me anything. So at the interview, I was asking questions like, what platforms are you going to release on? What is the game? And they were just, can't talk about that. Like, so I really took a leap of faith to take this job, because I didn't know anything about what they were doing. But, I had played Eternal Darkness, and I was like, okay, this is a company that I want to work for. They're making amazing games. So I joined them, and so I was on their tech team, and they put me on networking, like multiplayer stuff. So I was I was helping out with and they were using Unreal Engine at the time when I joined, and so I was learning Unreal 3 and And it was really cool. We were talking to Epic developers because Unreal 3 was being developed in parallel to Gears of War, and we were using the engine at the same time and developing To Human. So it's cool when you have problems, you can message people right at Epic, like these famous people that you've heard of before are answering your questions. And
the Cliffy days.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
So I was doing that, and I did some other cool tech stuff. Like there was I was working on cloth simulation, and because at the time Unreal didn't have it, so we wrote our own, and I was the one who was working on that initially. And really quickly, I rose the ranks at Silicon Knights, and I got promoted to the lead of the tech and the tools team. So
nice.
So yeah, for a while there, I was. But I only ended up spanning about 3 years at Silicon Knights, and then my priorities shifted in life, and I had to move to another city, and so I moved to Toronto. They're based in St. Catharines, which is like an hour and a half drive from Toronto. So I moved to Toronto, and I tried to commute, and it just wasn't tenable. And so I quit, and I joined another company, Pseudo Interactive, who are not around anymore.
Cool.
But yeah, those were my days at Silicon Knights. I did not get to stick until the end of To Humans development, although I was around. There was some drama starting to happen when I left with Epic and lawsuits and stuff. But I guess I was fortunate to not be around for the worst of that. I do know a lot of people who were around during that, though, and I've heard some stories.
It's pretty rough. Rough. Now, thank you for that, because it goes to show your journey, and again, elevating to that lead, and then your online experience, and then being able to now use some of that knowledge and implement that into this game. And it's pretty cool because you guys got like procedurally generated, dungeons, and you got a cooperative aspect. Me and Maddie are huge co-op guys, so I actually like that aspect of it. So I just wanted to salute you on that, because I thought that was a cool part of your journey. But
thank you.
I wanted to dive into ID at Xbox a little bit with you, Graham. One thing I've noticed in recent Xbox showcases is an uptick in Xbox being like, come talk to us, come offer us your games. I think they mentioned working with 200 Japanese developers now with the ID at Xbox program. I guess what I really want to ask is it as easy as they make it out to be? I asked that genuinely, and we could talk about this more probably off camera, as someone who's working on a game. I'm like, they're making it sound like walk up, talk your talk, show your game, and it's like, done deal. Is it as helpful of a program, if you will, as they're really making it out to be?
Okay, so from my perspective, I think the answer is yes. But I can't really speak for someone who's like brand new, like a brand new company coming in.
Sure.
But my impression is that it is the same for them. That like the ID at Xbox program is basically like making it possible for anyone who has a game that they want to release on Xbox. It really is making it possible for that to happen. And I'm sure that there's got to be some kind of evaluation process in place where like shovelware is not going to get onto the platform, right? They've got to be doing some base level of like filtering, I think. Right. But barring that stuff, I feel like, if you got a game and the game is going to be good or decent, at least, like I feel like ID at Xbox is allowing pretty much everything to get onto the platform. I don't have a lot of visibility into like how many games are like getting released on ID at Xbox at any time, but I can say at least from our perspective, Xbox has always been like a secondary platform for us until this game. So we've always come out Xbox afterwards. Actually, maybe it's a story that might be interesting. If you rewind back to the Xbox 360 days, it was really difficult for people like us to get games out on Xbox 360. There was rules in place that prevented independent developers from launching games, digital-only games, onto Xbox 360. And so what ended up happening there was I can't remember the exact details, but like if you wanted to release digital games on Xbox, like to Xbox Live Arcade, that's what it was called.
Arcade, yeah.
Yep. You had to also be putting physical products on store shelves. And so publishers would get these, like, I don't know what they would call them, credits or something, or slots for Xbox Live Arcade based on like the number of retail shelf boxes, different releases they're doing there, right? So for a company like us to get onto Xbox Live Arcade, we had to talk to publishers who had these slots and negotiate, like, can we get one of your slots? And we'll give you this percentage of our royalties or something like that. So we actually, to get Guacamelee to be released on Xbox 360, we had to work with Activision. And, we would have preferred if something like ID at Xbox existed at the time to go through that process to get on there. But that wasn't there at the time. It feels like ID at Xbox was created to solve this problem of like independent developers want to release their games, but they have to work with publishers, and publishers are just taking a cut, and they're not really providing. Well, sometimes they provide QA and stuff like that, or promotional. But if you don't want to do that, you don't really have any other choice. If you want your game on Xbox 360, you have to work with a publisher to do it, right? So now there's this direct path that Microsoft is providing through ID at Xbox, which is really appreciated because there's less people taking a piece of the pie. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to work with the publisher.
Right. That's what I was going to get into. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's really a business at the end of the day. Like, PlayStation effectively in the early days, you were having to go through less cuts of the profits. So that was the optimal path for you and your company, right?
Yeah, I mean, it actually wasn't possible for us to go on Xbox without a publisher. With Sony, it was possible. Yeah, I mean, Sony had like other problems. They had like a really cumbersome process that has been streamlined as well nowadays. So, like we had to submit our games to like multiple levels of evaluation. It felt like it was really like a quality checking at multiple points in the project, right? And they would send feedback and be like, "We want you to change this and that," and now that stuff doesn't exist anymore either. So both platforms have become easier, and Nintendo as well. All the platforms have made it easier for people to release, but definitely ID at Xbox is like Microsoft's solution to some problems that they had back in the past, historical problems. And I think, it does seem like it's pretty easy for developers to get their games on Xbox through this program now.
Yeah, I wanted to carry this into another thing I've really noticed with a lot of companies, with all of these options popping up, Game Pass being the latest of them, is this sort of long-term game that a lot of companies play. I always like to cite the example of Control. Control was a game that I remember when it came out from Remedy. It released in, I want to say, August 2019, and here on the show, like we track the charting for all these game sales, and I remember Control was a game that was very good, reviewed quite well. And it didn't chart, but through word of mouth, gradual deals with Epic, Xbox, Game Pass, and Ultimate Edition, a re-release. I've noticed that it's really never quite over for these games. And as you kind of went through your story a bit, like government funding, you've done some exclusivity, Game Pass, potential ports, and working in a PS Plus game of the month. When is it determined for you, I guess, that like, and I'm hoping you've never had to have this happen, but like, oh, this game wasn't profitable. Like, when is it actually the line's drawn and you say like, okay, we didn't make as much as we wanted to? Because I feel like these games just keep battling and securing deals long term, where there's always effectively money to be made. And I'm sorry if I'm asking you a million money questions. Just I find the business side of the industry so fascinating, and it's so unknown.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question.
Thank you.
There's your initial launch, and that can give you some kind of indication of like, at least like, how well did you market this game, and how good is the game? Because like, okay, so you also get all your initial reviews are really important too, right? Like, I know a lot of people don't like to look at Metacritic as a metric for things, but I'm always looking at Metacritic, even to decide what games to buy. I look at Metacritic and OpenCritic. Is that a hot take?
Yeah, that's spicy. No. I'm gonna let you continue though. Please continue. I know this is great. This is great insight from a developer.
Yeah.
Your mindset. So continue.
I mean, just to dive into that a little bit. I mean, obviously, I have people that I know that they like games, the same games that I like. So those are the people who I look to first, right?
Respectfully, yes.
Yeah. But if you want a general sense of like how your game's being received across the board, Metacritic's a good place to look. That's where you're going to see all the reviews, the ones you normally wouldn't see, and like a general sense of something. Like is this game well received? So well received at launch is extremely important to me. And then in terms of like the financial thing, of course, you're going to see, your day one sales are really important as well. On some platforms, it's more important than others. Like, On Steam, there's a big thing where like I think if you come out and do strong, then you'll start to get more featuring and it kind of snowballs. Like you can stay really high if you're in the top charts because people continue to see your game, and being on the front page of Steam is really important to like continued sales, right? You want to start and stay on there as long as possible. And then on the Xbox side for us this time, because of the Game Pass, I don't think that day one sales is going to be a great metric for us, but like watching how many people are downloading and playing the game will be a good metric, right? So but okay, so back to your original question, when do you know if the game's profitable or not? That's a great question. You kind of don't know. Like I think you can tell pretty quickly if it's going to be profitable. If it is going to be profitable, the day one sales can tell you that right away. With Guacamelee, we knew in the first month at Guacamelee, I think the pub fund for Guacamelee recouped in the first month. And we had a government loan at the time, and that also recouped really quickly. And so we knew that it was profitable, like really quickly. It's harder for something that comes out of the gate a little bit slower. For us, one of our games, Severed, came out of the gate a little bit slower because we launched on Vita. Vita was like at the end of its life cycle. That game took longer for us to finish than we initially expected, so the budget was a bit higher. But then, once your initial launch has passed, it's not over. Things are not over. It's like, okay, what are we going to do with this game? Like, where are the other opportunities? We could bring it to 3DS. We did. We bring it to Switch, right? And we brought it to iOS, right? And that's the only time we've ever launched a game on iOS. So you can squeeze more juice out of the Project Orange if you're like keeping an open mind and thinking about other platforms. And then of course there's other opportunities like humble bundles or Game Pass is one that we've done a couple times before, like in the past with games after they've launched. For Guacamelee, there's PlayStation Plus. They say humble bundle, humble plus. Like there's all these other opportunities that you can use to get to the profitability point, or to just get extra profits if you're already there. And then for us, again, like being in Ontario, which doesn't apply to most people, I know, there's really generous tax credits and grants and stuff like that you can get after the fact to recoup some, nice. Like when we spend money on Ontario labor, we can get some of that back. And that takes a while to come through. So like, sometimes this was taking us like 2 years after the project is done. We're getting back some money, which, sometimes it would tip us into the profitability range, right? So yeah, it can be like a really long time. It could take you a year, 2 years sometimes before you've done all the deals that you needed to do to get past the break-even point. And it really depends on the project. And I think really like how well it resonates at launch. Like, are you getting enough attention on your project at launch? And also like, how is it a good game? Are people enjoying it? And that's where the Metacritic for me comes in a little bit.
Gotcha.
But yeah, simple things like your release date, super important. If you come out on the same day as Elden Ring, you're probably screwed. Right? And initially, Elden Ring was supposed to come out on the same day as us, so we moved our date, and then they moved their date, and then we moved our date back. Like we're just like dodging Elden Ring. Yeah.
Listen, I respect that you said that though. That is so real, and being cognizant of that, because again, as indie platform, that is so important. You don't want to be lost in the zeitgeist of sometimes a bigger game and have the kind of the moment to yourself. Yeah. I did want to just jump in because you're making some great points on the storefronts and obviously, with Sony and Steam and also Nintendo. I know like their eShops kind of, let's say, difficult, but it's very like if you're not one of the major first party games, in my opinion, I feel it's kind of harder to get that visibility sometimes, outside of the initial release window. So like circling this all back to obviously the Game Pass deal, what we've been talking about, like, is that also factoring into the decision that, you kind of reside alongside other games where it's like, hey, new on Game Pass this week, and you kind of sharing real estate with these other bigger games that we may not normally get that real estate with if it wasn't per se a Game Pass deal, just strictly an ID and Xbox kind of thing.
Oh yeah, I think that's true. Definitely Game Pass will get people to try things that they never would have otherwise tried. I think that's definitely true. Yeah. And so you can create a fan base, I think. Like and I know a couple of developers who've told me this themselves. Like they've launched into Game Pass and they're like, yeah, Game Pass is where we always want to launch first because we don't have a huge like our studio doesn't have a huge following, and and our game hasn't managed to push into like people's consciousness, the marketing hasn't reached enough people. So Game Pass is a really good marketing tool because you have like a lot of Game Pass subscribers. I don't know what the number is now, but I think it's millions of people are going to open their Game Pass and see your game. And what do they have to lose to try it, right? If they see it and they're like, okay, yeah. I mean, it's really just time, right? Like you don't have time to play every game, right? But you can take a chance on things a lot more easily. You don't have to drop $25 or whatever it's going to be, right? So you can create fans by launching it to Game Pass and having people try your game, and maybe they'll tell someone else who doesn't have Game Pass and they'll buy it on another platform, right? There can be this spread of viral marketing kind of about your game outside of the platform's ecosystem, right? And you might end up making sales elsewhere that you wouldn't have made otherwise because you launched into Game Pass for sure. Yeah.
Cool.
I wanted to sticking with my theme here, just because it's just rolling now. It's just rolling. We're snowballing. I had interviewed Mike Rose, who works at No More Robots, and he was our first indie developer we had on to really talk about Game Pass and sort of what it does for a team, because one of his games from his company, Descenders, was like a top Game Pass game, and it kind of gave them an identity with an audience because of Game Pass. But one thing that during that interview that stuck out to me was he said something I've never heard a developer say, which was, sometimes I think companies price their games too low. And he mentioned how he will put $25 on a game to give it almost this premium allure. And I thought it was kind of genius in a way. I was like, interesting. He's like, so when you put it on a sale, it's like, oh, I got to get that. And it was this 4D chess type play that has been working for him. And I want to know, just because, I've never heard a company say it, what is the pricing process for Graham Smith and Drinkbox? Do you guys go the premium route? I mean, I'm not saying you don't make premium games, but is that your play, or how do you decide the price tag for a game?
We get that $60 Super Deluxe edition. Where do you gonna put that one out?
This is also a great question. So yeah, we don't do that. We don't put a premium price to make people think it's a premium product. No, the process is a lot more boring, I would say. I have a giant spreadsheet where I put every game that came out in the last 2 years, all the indie games in the last 2 years that I would say I think are comparable to our game, with the prices. And what I'm really trying to find is, what do I think is a fair price for the game? And this is, we also look back at our old games, how much we charged for those, how well they sold, and how much we've invested in this game compared to those games, how the size of the game compared to those games. And so, like I said, Nobody Saves the World is the biggest game we've ever made. It's 3 times as big as Guacamelee. To play through the game, I mean, it's even, if you want 100% it, it's even bigger. But so we're looking at the pricing. This is just one aspect of what I was just talking about. Looking at the prices of Guacamelee was $20. This game, we spent an extra year at a much larger budget. We put a lot more effort into it, so we added $5 to the price. And not just from that, that's not the only reason. We looked at all these other games. If you do, and I looked at through a lot of different lenses, I know it's not a good lens. Price per hour of gameplay is not a good lens. I don't usually use that as a thing. But if you do sort by price per hour, we're super cheap, right? This is a really good deal, right? But it's more about what do we think the quality of the experience is? What do we think is a fair price? And trying to set something that we think is fair, that people are not going to buy the game and feel like, oh, that sucks, I got ripped off, right? And so that's how we determine it for sure. Now, what Mike said, I think is interesting, because there's definitely a truth to the fact that you get a lot of sales at your launch at close to full price, but over the years, your tail is really what takes over, right? So you're getting these big spikes in sales every time you're doing a sale, right? Every time you're part of a discounted promotion or whatever. So if your initial price is higher, then every one of those sales is going to give you more royalties than it would have otherwise, right? So I can see the argument, for the benefit of your tail, you might want to price it higher here, and maybe you're going to lose some sales because people are like, oh, I don't want to pay $25. It's too much. If it was $20, they might have bought it. So instead, maybe on Steam, they'll wishlist it or, whatever. But but then through the years, like if you have a higher price at first, then you're going to benefit more long term. I can understand that argument, so that does make sense.
Yeah, I just thought it was such a fascinating thing to be said in an interview, so I wanted to catch your 2 cents on it. Kyle, I don't want to take full over here. Do you have any other questions?
It's a great question because you talk about, Grant make a good point about value proposition, and I'm just thinking about all the things he's including in this game, right? And I'm just like, you got this, pale androgynous kind of figure with you can take all these forms, you got all these different skill trees or form trees, so to speak, and I just think about that, and then I think about, okay, now we got an additional co-op component, right? Now you got the procedurally generated dungeons and the scaling difficulty, and then I think Jim Guthrie got a bag for some soundtrack, right? Like, there's a lot going on. So I was like, me personally, not that I was saying that you could have charged. I would have been like, okay, if he would have charged 30, I could understand based on what he added versus Guacamelee, and Guacamelee 2. But what I like what you said is how you have that spreadsheet, so to speak, right? You kind of look at where your game is in comparison to kind of similar in the genre and that price and value proposition and say, you know what, this right here would be fair. And then I'm just thinking about that in conjunction with clearly the Game Pass deal and just like, ultimate visibility as much as possible. And a quick thing I want to ask is like, one thing that we're seeing, games do come to Game Pass, they'll have a benefit, but sometimes we'll see it the opposite, where it's on the tail end, right? It didn't launch in Game Pass, it came out, and then later on, it's like a spike up because now more people are now getting to it. So I just wanted to get your mindset there versus, dropping it initially day and date, so to speak, versus the other approach, which is the tail end. Like, hey, we'll sell it regularly. And then, if things taper off, maybe, we could go to Microsoft and say, hey, I don't know who approaches whom, but I just wanted to know your thought process on each philosophy.
Yeah, I think, both approaches are valid, and both approaches, I mean, with Nobody Saves the World, we will have done both approaches now because we did have Guacamelee original, and then we had Guacamelee 2 as part of Game Pass. And Guacamelee 2 came to Game Pass after launch, I believe. So yeah, it's going to factor into the negotiation with them, obviously, because if they're going to get something from you day and date with the initial launch, you're going to be able to negotiate like a better deal with Game Pass for sure. So that's a factor for sure. But like it's also great if you can approach them after the tail has started to settle, and you're like, okay, we're looking for other avenues for like trying to get some more royalties. Game Pass is really a good option for people, but at the same time, it's not a guarantee, right? Like I'm pretty sure lots of people come to the Game Pass team and there's a strong curation there, and so if it's not a game that they're interested in, you won't be able. It won't even really be an option for you, right? So, so there's you can't really rely on Game Pass down the line. It's because you don't know for sure that that you'll be able to negotiate something. Yeah.
Good point. Yeah, no, I'm glad you said it because I have a good friend and Stephen Denton, and he's one of the devs from why am I forgetting the name of the game right now? but basically he came out with a game was kind of like almost like a Souls 2D kind of a game, and he was talking about that process and how it really helped him initially with the negotiation with coming out, and it's just interesting to hear the mindset until the end of the game. There we go. But it's just very interesting to hear the mindset of what you said, because like you said, the negotiation aspect is a big deal. Like you're taking a risk if it's later on. Microsoft might not be interested, or for whatever reason, the fact that the deal might not be in place if it's later on versus in the beginning, when you kind of pitch it. And also it has to be mutual interest on both sides.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there's different challenges with trying to pitch a game to Game Pass before it's done too, right? Because they have to like trust that your game is going to be good, right? Like,
good point.
So you have to be like, for us, like I said, we pitched like halfway through the project. So we had a lot of stuff we could show, and we were able to get them excited about the game, luckily.
Right. I was going to actually just ask about that, because one of the things I've hammered on my personal YouTube channel and sometimes here on Defining Duke is, I've wondered about Xbox's ability to, if you will, quality check some of the day one drops that they've done through Game Pass. We talked a lot here on the show about, just to name a couple, I think of Dark Alliance is a game that came out that was very buggy and broken. I look at something like Outriders, which as much as I loved Outriders, it was not in a great technical state. what is the quality checking process if you can actually get into this, like with Game Pass, where they're like looking at your game going like, okay, we're going to do this day one deal, because we know that Xbox isn't directly responsible for the quality of the product, but like how hard do they check your game before it hits the service?
I felt that they evaluated our game pretty thoroughly before. Yes, I did. I can't speak for Dark Alliance.
They came through, combed through.
But yeah, like you gave some good counterexamples there. So I don't know what happened in those cases, but like we had multiple meetings and phone calls with people on the Game Pass team, and they were providing feedback. And like I said about the co-op multiplayer thing, that was a pretty big one. Like they felt pretty strongly that the game would benefit from this, and so they were pushing for that too. So yeah, it felt like at least on their side, the evaluation process was pretty thorough for us. I can't speak how it is with other developers, and
sure.
But yeah. Sorry, I don't have much more to add to that. Yeah,
no, it's fine. It was a pretty quick question there. The last one I personally have, Cog, and feel free to fire away with any others you have.
Sure.
This one also is like someone else said something. I just want to get another perspective on it from someone who's in the scene. The developer of Replaced, Sad Cat Studios, praised Xbox at one point. It caused a pretty big stir in the Xbox community, because they were saying, I'll read the exact quote here so you can hear it word for word. The biggest part of the partnership for us is that Microsoft actually cares about the indie market. Otherwise, well, there would be much fewer games on all platforms. They really give a chance to small studios to actually produce something and provide marketing awareness to people. I would say that for indie studios, I can't think of a con with partnering with Microsoft, because they would provide funding and marketing reach. Now, we've gotten into a lot of that there. I guess, what is your response, if anything, and if you feel comfortable doing so, with developers kind of taking the stance of like, Xbox actually cares? And the reason I ask is because consumer wise, people in our community, that's kind of the new narrative. Like, Xbox cares, PlayStation doesn't. Nintendo's off in their own planet, charging you $50,000 for a damn port. What I'm trying to get a gauge on is, what's the developer feel for Xbox actually caring, if you can get into it at all?
What's the scuttlebutt? What the damn said? Come on, Graham.
Well, I actually feel like Xbox cares. That's the short answer. As for other platforms, I don't want to say anything negative about other platforms, because we still work with them and everything. But sometimes I feel like there's like kind of you feel things shifting in the like I was saying, the Xbox 360 days when we couldn't get on there. At that time, didn't feel like Xbox cares, right? So and it feels like it's constantly moving around, and sometimes I speculate what's happening is like when the narrative starts to change to Xbox cares and other people don't, people at Sony and and Nintendo are like hearing this too, right? And they're like, we got to do something, right? So then they'll change their policies, and then people will shift back, and like that kind of thing has been happening, and even to us too. Like we can feel that happening as well. So right now, definitely, I would say it feels a lot like Xbox cares. The people we work with there are incredible. It feels like they're doing so much for us to help us, get through cert and promote the game, and help us marketing the game, especially around the launch. And since this is the first time we're working with them as like our launch platforms, it's kind of all new to us, but it's been really appreciated, and I can say for sure that we love working with them on this project. It's absolutely great. Yeah,
that's pretty cool. Yeah, man, because especially it's actually very encouraging to hear that you said that, because especially from what I've heard, from I want to say the dark ages of Xbox Live Arcade, but I did hear there were some struggles initially, and then also specifically with the Xbox One era. And I remember at the time Sony was doing an excellent job with indie developers. You started to see them really embrace them at that time. And I remember the scuttlebutt at that generation was like, hey, Microsoft, it's a bit difficult to kind of get on the platform and get a game out there and get visibility. It was all these stipulations and rules, and Sony's process was much easier. So you see, like you said, like they all must talk, all the major ones, but to see now Xbox kind of metamorphosize and then change into where they are now is very encouraging. My final question was for you is that, you're coming down the final stretch, the launch of this game, obviously day-to-day Game Pass. How excited are you? Like, how does this feel? Is the weight now starting to come off your shoulder that you're almost at the finish line? You're about to launch this very cool, stylish, humorous, cooperative game. How excited is the team?
The team is very excited. The weight is not off the shoulders yet. I think probably Tuesday or Wednesday, once it's out, once the initial reviews have hit, then we'll feel either relief or we'll feel like, oh, the world hates it. I don't know. I hope it's more relief. But I know. But everything that we've been hearing so far, like, we started sending out review codes and stuff, and we're getting a lot of initial buzz from people saying that everyone's really enjoying the game, and so everything's really positive. So that's making us excited, but also like we're trying to keep it like. We don't want to let ourselves get too optimistic because, for sure there will be a couple people who don't gel with the game, and we got to like steel ourselves for like any negative reviews, and but yeah, it feels good to be wrapping up this project. That's true. Like I feel like this is one of the longest projects we've ever worked on, the team is ready for something new, and we're starting to talk about new ideas and stuff. So that's really exciting. Yeah. So ask me again next week, and maybe it's a different answer. Right now, the pressure is still on. I feel it. It's there. Yeah.
No, we wish you the best of luck, man. This is exciting, and I'm glad Maddie, had you on, and just to hear the story, the journey, and all the different aspects of game development that a lot of gamers, including ourselves, we're not privy to. So it's very cool to hear these kind of stories, and getting excited, man. What about you, Maddie?
Oh no, I'm really looking forward to this game. We're a recipient of the review code, so we'll be diving in soon, probably tonight actually. So Graham, you'll be hearing from me on Defining Duke. Don't worry.
Sounds good.
I'm really looking forward to it. But Graham, I really wanted to thank you for being so open, transparent here on this episode. Especially, I want to personally thank you because we're trying to long-term build up a bit of an interview rapport. We want to talk to more devs, do more spotlights. And since we're such a young show, for us, it's like we need someone to kind of take a chance on us who is a person of significant importance, like Mike Rose did, like you clearly are. And so I just want to thank you for taking a chance on us, kind of coming in. Like, I didn't have to really send you the question list in advance. You're like, yeah, hey, Matt, like, it's great to meet you. And sure, I'll do this. So I just wanted to give you a special thanks for helping us build something here. I really do appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, guys. My pleasure. No problem.
Much appreciated, man.
Cog, any final thoughts from you?
Look, man, I'm excited. Nobody say the word. Let's go. I'm excited. Co-op. I'm gonna take the strong man. I'm taking the magician. I'm taking the Shaolin monk. I'm doing that. The magician got the rabbit, so I like that. But yeah, I'm excited, man. Cooperative. It looks so fun, and I cannot wait. And what I like is the mixing of abilities as well. You don't have to lock in. So all this stuff sounds cool. It has that classic Drinkbox charm. Let's go. Launch day. Let's hit it.
Graham, one last time for those who are listening, because I know a lot of our audience is going to be interested in your game. When's it coming out? What is Nobody Saves the World? And go for it.
Yeah, sure. So Nobody Saves the World, top-down 2D RPG with randomized dungeons where you play like a lot of different character classes and you can mix and match your abilities. Coming out on Tuesday, January 18th on Xbox platforms and Steam, and it'll be day one Game Pass on Windows 10 Store and Xbox. Yeah.
The devs were saved.
Graham, thank you again so much for your time here on the show. Hopefully we get to talk again soon. Cog, it's been excellent doing this with you. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you all enjoyed. If there's any feedback you have for this, for future interviews that we do, please do fire away with that. Take great care of yourselves, and we'll see you next time for episode 52 of Defining Duke Ultimate. Peace out.
Defining Duke, an Xbox podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is recorded from the United States of America. The show is conceived by Matthew Mr. Matty Plays Schroeder and me, Colin Moriarty, and is written and produced by Matthew Schroeder. Matty's co-host is Barry Lord Cognito Eversley. Defining Duke's executive producer is Dustin Furman, and the show is edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's shows, including Defining Duke, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer support level on Patreon, and we're thankful for your kindness and generosity.